There's one major problem with following salon influencers, and if you don't know, it could cost you thousands, if not millions of dollars. And on today's show, we're going to talk about that problem and make sure you can fix it. Let's do it. Salon owners are some of the most amazing people on planet Earth. The only problem is sometimes their hearts are so big and they give so much of themselves to their staff and guests that it creates unintended consequences. Our goal is to change the industry by elevating the way the rest of the world sees salons, spas, and barbershops and give it the credibility that it truly deserves. This is the Salon Owner Evo Revo Show. Today's podcast is brought to you by Salon Scale, allowing you to charge by what you know, not by what you feel. Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome to today's Salon Owner Evo Revo Show. My name is Jason Everett, and with me, as always, is my partner in crime, Mr. Doug Campbell. What's up, Doug?
How's it going? Good to be here.
Dude, glad to have you on today, and really excited to be talking about the subject today because I think there are so many influencers out there in the space that I just think say some incredible things. However, one of the biggest challenges that comes up is there's some problems with kind of what they say, how they say it, what the timing is, and I want to talk about that today on the show. And we've got two incredible guests on today's show that I'd love to give you the opportunity to meet and introduce you to. I've got Chris and John from Shop Talk Podcast that are on the show today. What up, fellas? Good to have you on today. We're double podcasting.
What's up, guys? Happy to be here.
Yeah, super good to have you guys on, and really excited to be chatting with you guys today and seeing what the flow is gonna be like today. Because you guys have been awesome. You've interviewed us a couple of times. We've kind of bumped into each other some other places, and you guys run an incredible podcast. And if you guys haven't checked out Shop Top Podcast, we really would like you guys to go and listen to what some of the good things that these fellas have to say. And they are just absolute pros. So thanks for being on today, guys, and really glad to have you. We're talking about this subject of influencers today. And one of the things that I think happens over and over again is that influencers tend to do one thing, which is they say something to create a larger level of influence, right? They'll say something like, you should double your prices, or you should fire all your clients, or quit your job before tomorrow. And they'll throw kind of like a big bold headline out there to get attention. And while I think that is a really good thing for them, because it gets them a lot of followers and it can attract a lot of opportunity for them, it doesn't necessarily create a good formula or recipe for other people to follow. And I think sometimes they struggle with that. What have been some of the things that you guys have experienced when it comes to kind of the headline or shock therapy, as it pertains to influencers?
Well, first of all, it's a great topic and an interesting question. And we talk to a lot of different people on our podcast. Many of them are influencers.
Right.
And that said, even when we're in conversations with those people, often great hairstylists, good people, they've built a business, but they'll even admittedly say, listen, being an influencer and being a hairstylist in the salon are two very different jobs, where one of them doesn't always necessarily complement the other. One of them, I'm trying to gain the attention and interest of hairstylists and make myself bigger, more known in the industry so I can educate. The other is like building an honest, organic business behind the chair. And those foundations, oftentimes when we get into questioning about that, the real talk comes out, and it's like, guys, building my business in the salon, I had to do this the organic way. I had to ask for referrals, give great customer service, charge accordingly as I was growing. And oftentimes what you're getting is the end of the story 5 years down the road after I've already done all these things. It's like, well, what happened before then to get to where I was at in my business and gain the expertise?
Yeah. And Chris, you bring up a good point, which is like, I just want to be really clear, because you might be an influencer watching this podcast. You're like, you dirty bastards, Chris, John, Doug, and Jason, how dare you, knock it out. That's really not the point of what we're talking about. I think it's more the misapplication of information is what we're talking about. Is are you listening to education and advice that's right for you at the step in your business and in your career development that you are right now? Because I think sometimes what can happen is as a stylist, as a salon owner, you can, like you could be, for example, a salon owner that like hasn't earned your first $500,000 yet, and you're listening to advice of a salon owner that has 40 locations, and it's like, well, that's not the advice you should be following. Like what they're doing is not the same thing you should be doing. And I see this all the time is people are like, well, I've seen Costco run a deal, or I've seen Ulta run this deal, or I've seen this other business. I see Walmart do this deal. I'm going to have to do a deal like that. And they don't realize that that's not something that they should be doing at their size of business or their size of business, whether it's individual stylist or an entire salon.
Yeah. And the answer might be yet. Like, I'm not there yet.
Totally.
Yeah. I think one of the things that's important is that influencers do or have given us lots of great information, right? They've shared with us the things that we have to do in regards to making sure that we've set boundaries with our guests. Those are good things to talk about. They talk about how we can increase our pricing because those are important things to talk about. These are all good things. The challenge is all of that was a process, right? All of that was a journey. In order to get what they have, you have to have walked that journey too. And it's not as simple as, hey, I'm going to charge this. Hey, if a client's 15 minutes late, I'm going to kick them to the curb. There are things that have come out of the whole influencer movement, for lack of a better way to put it, that's great information. Yet, as we've already kind of talked about, there is a process to get from A to B. And in the end, you can end up hurting yourself if you kind of jumpstart the process before you should.
Yeah, and I think. Oh, go ahead, Doug.
It's the gradient play, right? So you hear it from an influencer and it's way out here, and you got to take that back. So raising my prices. Well, influencer doubled their prices and still kept the majority of their clients. Okay, I hear that, so I can take the principle of that and say I may need to increase my prices, but I'm not at the place I could double my prices yet. So what price point can my business handle right now? So I think the whole thing is listening to influencers, but then taking the gradient back to where you are on your journey so that you take the principle. Yeah, it's a good idea to make sure you got the right boundaries with your clients. You may not be in the position if you're just starting out.
Yeah, for sure. And I think one of the challenges that can come up over and over and over again is being in a position that the typical amount of information that you get from an influencer can be in a soundbite, can be in a like, do what I'm doing. And I think the reason why people like to be influenced by people in the future is like, hey, they're ahead of me. They're doing something I haven't done. And Chris, to your point, I haven't done yet. But I think you got to really say, you said it. You said about do what I. You said it a little differently. I'm gonna tell you what I would say is that don't do what I just did. Do what I've done so you can do what I just did.
Yeah, do what I did to get there.
Yeah, exactly.
And I think the thing is about this, it's like I love what you said because I do love that quick visceral stimulation of seeing something that somebody's ahead of me in a moment where I can look at it on Instagram or wherever, and I can gain a little bit of context around it. But one of the things that we talk about a lot that we fear is when I throw out the idea of business foundations like KPIs. I hate to use KPIs right now because, I know that's like anti-influencer what we're talking about, but what is a KPI? It's a key performance indicator that if I measure it over time, it shows me how well I'm doing in my business, right? So an example of that might be retention. Now, let's say I'm a new-ish stylist and I'm growing and I am gaining some traction and I'm starting to see people come back, but that number isn't as big as I think it is because I don't track it. I don't see it as important. I don't, necessarily care yet, right?
Yeah.
If I don't realize that my pricing is directly correlated to my retention, like if my pricing is higher than my actual retention, I will stunt the growth of supply and demand that I'm creating through good service.
Right.
And I think it gets dangerous when we start to make, again, that really paint the world with a wide brush and go, hey guys, everybody needs to do this because this is where I'm at. And I go, wait a minute, there are actually some things that you can measure along the way that are going to let you know when you're ready, how ready are you, how big of a jump is this? And, if I'm a veteran stylist and I'm 10 years past where I should have had a price adjustment, there are also things I
Right.
can measure,
Totally.
right? And so,
Yeah.
when we take our eye off the ball of what got us there, that's a problem because like you
Right.
said, all of these things are always in play.
Right.
Mhm.
Yeah. And you mentioned this rule and this idea around when do you need to make the jump. What in our experience what Doug and I typically teach is we have an 80% rule, and this comes from there's something called capacity utilization, and you talked about
Mhm.
KPIs for a second.
Yep.
Is there was this old rule that churches like mega churches followed, and it was once the church was filling up to about 80% of their capacity, people
Mhm.
would come to church and feel like the church is completely full. They couldn't find a seat and they would leave. And so we borrowed that and said, okay, well, how do you use that inside of a salon environment to say, all right, well, how do you look at this? When do you know if it's time for your overall salon to raise prices? How do you know
Right.
if it's time for you to raise prices as an individual stylist? And so what we look at is once your personal books are full at 80%, you're 80% full, clients are having a hard time getting booked. They're feeling like they have to wait, months for them to get in on their schedule. And it's
Mhm.
time for you to be able to raise prices. And it doesn't mean you're going to double your prices. It just means you're
Mhm.
going to have a pricing increase. And again, if you need to figure out a level system or something like that, like reach out,
Yeah.
get some help, get some support on it. But then at that 80%, you can build it. And same thing, once your salon, and we talk about this for locations, once your salon is at 80% of its total capacity between hours that are spent behind the chair, total staff that you have, etc., it's now time for you to find another location, right? And so you have to
Right.
have measurements inside your salon and inside your own personal book of business to say, this is the level where I'm going to increase my prices, not just because, like, if I said, okay, I've got enough slots for me to do, and I'll just use 100 guests just because it's easy. I'll say I can do 100 guests. Once I hit 80 guests, well, I need to raise my prices.
Mhm.
The problem is when people are at 10 guests and they have the
Right.
capacity for 100 guests, that is not the time to raise prices. That is a time to fill up your schedule, book
Yeah.
yourself solid, and make sure that there's enough demand for what you're doing.
And on that same venue, if you're measuring your KPIs and you're measuring your progress, you get to do the reverse, which means, okay, let's have that price increase, right?
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, if you watch that 80 clients drop down to 70, drop down to 60, then you need to step up your game, right?
Yeah,
Maybe that
yeah,
would.
that's a great point. Great point.
And if you're not tracking those, here's the thing about influencers, and I think this is important, is they're inspirational. They inspire us to do
Yeah.
things that we might not otherwise have done. They inspire us to potentials that we have as artists and as hairstylists. Yet, if we're not tracking those numbers, and I love the 80% piece, right? We call that productivity, right?
Yeah.
If you're 80% productive, then yes, it's time for a price increase. But if your productivity starts to take a dive, this is not the time, and sometimes that's where we're at. We're like, well, we're not really busy. Maybe I should raise my prices.
Yeah.
Yeah, check and look at your productivity first, because if that's the real issue, the fix is far different. The fix is, how do I get more clients in the door? What does my online game look like? What does my referral game look like?
Yeah.
And heck, sometimes we have to look at ourselves and go, what's my service game look like? Is it
I was gonna
worth it?
say, what's your consultation look like? Like,
Like,
what's your referrals? Like, how are those really working? Because if you're finding you're not getting referrals, it might be time for you to say, I might be relying on some old habits that are not
mm,
serving me anymore, that are keeping
mm,
me from growing my book of business. Because I think sometimes what can happen, especially for stylists who've been around for a long time, is
mm,
they get very complacent. They get
yeah.
very like, well, I don't have to do that anymore. That's what I used to do when I had to grow my business.
Mhm.
I think to your point, if you start to see that drop or that reduction of income, you got to ask yourself, well, what do I need to do in order to change that or increase my productivity in those areas? Because if they're low, it should just be, if they're all indicators, right? It's like,
Mhm.
it's like getting diagnosed and finding out that you need more vitamin D. Like you got to add in the right ingredient at the right time.
Yeah.
Yeah. One
I
of the
love that
things I
you
think, Chris, did you want to say
go,
something?
John. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I think one of the things that we hear often is we need to charge what we're worth. We need to charge what we're worth, and we so need to do that, because
Yeah.
for too long, I think Jay Williams was someone that shared with us, or maybe it was you guys, I forgot who, that talked about the level of haircut pricing in the United States. And when they did the survey like 10 years ago, the average haircut price was $50 nationwide. And 10 years later, we do that same study, and the average haircut's $55. That's
Mm,
terrible. We as an
yeah.
industry do need to charge more. Yet, here's the other piece. If what you're charging and clients are not coming back, meaning your productivity is going down, your
Yeah.
retention's going down,
Yeah, your
the
pre-book is in the
customer is
toilet.
telling you something. What they're
Yeah, it's
telling you
inventory.
is it's not worth it,
Right.
whatever it is. Whether
So
it's
let's
$30, $50, or $100 for a haircut,
yeah.
if your clients aren't coming back, they're saying to you, John, I like you, but it's not worth it.
Yeah. So, John, I think that's a great point. I want to talk more about pricing in just a second. So I think that is a hot topic that I'd like to get into a little bit. We got to take a quick break. After this break, we'll come back. We'll talk about pricing. How do you know how to charge what you are worth and how to make sure that you preserve what you're worth, all after the short break. We'll be right back.
Hey, HPSA listeners, let me ask you this. Are you tired of not knowing what your hair color is costing you on every appointment and watching it chew up your profit? Well, with Salon Scale, we take the guesswork out for you. Using a mobile app paired with a Bluetooth scale, Salon Scale will tell you exactly what your color is costing you on every bowl mix down to the gram. As you mix, Salon Scale will also digitally store your formulas and track how much product is being used in real time, so you can manage your inventory, cover your expenses, and generate more profit in your salon. Use promo code HPSA10 to get 10% off an annual subscription. Salon Scale, the new standard for mixing color.
We're talking with Chris and John from Shop Talk Podcast. If you get a chance, go over, check out their podcast. They got tons of great shows, lots of interviews, and amazing stuff that they teach and what they train on. And on today's show, we're talking about the potential bad influence of influencers. We're talking about what are some of the issues that happen when you only listen to influencers, kind of your only source. And John and Chris, you know, I saw this the other day. This was circulating the internet. Is people are saying, oh, dang, I forgot the meme in just 1 second. It was talking about, it said, I didn't get my cosmetology degree on YouTube. Right? Have you guys seen this floating around? You seen this thing? They're like, YouTube is not cosmetology school. And like, I think that there's some real big truth in that, is there great information available you can go and watch from influencers or watch on YouTube or whatever? Like, dude, both of us have tons of content online. Of course there's good content online, but that should never be a replacement for somebody giving you direct feedback on your reality of, you know, where you're at, what you want to do, getting direct feedback. Because that's the experience I've had, is that I can't learn online because sometimes I'll get advice from somebody who's way ahead of me or way below me that's not applicable to me at this time in my business.
Yeah, and I love that you use the word direct feedback, because in my mind, like, the person that I'm envisioning there is the feedback that my clients are giving me. Meaning, like, how authentic is that smile? Are they sending it? You know, listen, if I'm like every salon owner or high performing hairstylist can think about a time when you're in the salon, you look across the room and you see there's a client visually uncomfortable inside of a service and that stylist didn't know it. They didn't realize it in the moment, right? So it took somebody else's eyes from across the room to go, hey, have you checked in on your client? She looks uncomfortable. She looks this. Wow, that client at the front desk, maybe it's your support staff that comes up and says, they didn't really look too happy checking out. But
they were like, no, it was good. Yeah. It was good.
But I didn't see that. I didn't catch those cues. And I never see that person again. And I don't know it. And that happens enough time in a row that people start to talk. And eventually, you know, I love what John said earlier. Like, I land in a place where I'm emotional. I'm a little bit slower behind the chair. And I go, oh, I know what I'll do. I'll raise my prices. So I'll put myself in a higher demographic.
Because I'm talking the wrong people.
Yeah, I'm putting myself, now to a client who's going to expect higher value, going to expect more out of a service, and I'm not there yet. And, you know, I mean, here's one of the things I think about all the time as a 48-year-old person now, is that when I was younger, I didn't know what I didn't know.
Yeah.
And totally. I didn't realize that there were levels of maturity that you hit throughout your career behind the chair or as a salon owner or leader or whatever have you. And you go, wow, I just realized I've come into a new place in my career. Yeah. And those are things that KPIs help us to not only measure, right, but they also help us to reflect on and go, wow, people aren't coming back. What does that mean? Well, I'm not doing something, right? Now, whatever it is, it can be fixed, but I have to know about it. Like, I'm not doing something.
Yeah, I mean, if you don't measure and you don't know what your results are telling you, it creates a problem. You also mentioned getting outside feedback. This is why I mean, like, look, all of us here give feedback to people on a regular basis for salons and their stylists. But I think taking that feedback and actually applying it and getting the right feedback at the right time in order to take the right actions to do it is what's critical. Because you mentioned it, we all have blind spots. Right. We all every single day. I mean, part of it is like that's why we all work with each other. That's why Doug and I work together. That's why you guys work together is that you can see blind spots that your other partner or team member can't see, and that's where a salon team environment is really important to start to get that feedback. I think sometimes when people are by themselves, especially in like a rental environment and a suite rental or booth rental, is they get stuck and they're like, I just don't know what's going on. Like I'm not getting any outside feedback, and the only feedback they can measure are those KPIs to say, well, if it's going up or going down, what do I need to change? And I think sometimes you can misdiagnose the problem and say it's because I'm charging the wrong price for being at the right level. So how is it, John, because you mentioned this before the break, how is it, John, that we can start charging the right prices? Do you have some thoughts on that to know or what? And do you ever recommend people ever lower their prices? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I usually don't recommend that people lower their prices because that's taking a step backwards. What I would say instead is, if your haircut's $50 and you're not getting the retention that you want, right? You're not getting to that 80% productivity level, then what do you need to do? And when I ask stylists, because Chris and I coach, I'll ask a stylist. I'll say it's one of two things. It's either your people skills or your technical skills.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll ask 100 hairdressers. 99 of them will say, "Oh, it's my technical skills," or they'll say, "Oh, it's my people skills." They know it's not a mystery, right?
It's a
And
great question.
so the first thing I'm going to suggest is don't lower your pricing. Don't go backwards. But what I will say is now you've got to reach that expectation. If your haircuts is $75, what do you need to do to make it worth it? Do you need, and here's the thing that I think we forget with this whole piece on influencers is we're stuck on the technical end, setting boundaries, setting prices, doubling everything. We forget probably the most important part, which is the relationship building.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
People do business with people they like. Right. And if you're not working on the relationship building part of the experience between you and your customers, people will forgive you for not the best job. People will forgive you for being a little late if they like you. But if your thing is, I'm going to do your hair, and if you don't like the way I do it, well, you can go see somebody else. It's probably why your book is half empty, right?
Yeah.
We have a saying. It's like, look, and I think this is sometimes what can be misconstrued when listening to an influencer or just somebody who doesn't have the direct influence over you personally, right? Is that's why it's really important to get coaching from your salon owner or from a manager or somebody like that. Is that it's got to be good for the stylist and good for the client and good for the salon.
Yeah.
That's right.
Right. And I think a lot of times people make decisions like, I'm going to raise my prices. Well, is that good for your clients? Is it good for the salon? Is it good for you as a stylist? Like, you're like, oh, well, it's good for me, clearly. Like, it's good for me because I'm going to make more money. Was it good for the salon? Don't know. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't, depending on the thing. Is it good for the guest? Well, it is good for the guest if it means that they get a better experience, to your point. Right. If they get if you've leveled up, then your prices can level up. Yeah. If you figured out how to add value. I mean, that's the thing. I know a lot of people being in this industry for a long time that a lot of people that charge ridiculous amounts of money for a haircut, $1,000, $2,000, like just, not your average haircut from Supercuts down the street. You know what I mean? And the reason why those people charge so much is because of the value that they add to the experience. And I'm not talking about, oh, they brought a hot towel. I'm talking about because they can provide some experience that no one else can. Maybe they fly into a city to cut your hair before you go to an award show or whatever it is, but they provide crazy value that the average stylist doesn't provide. That's why they can charge that much, not just because somebody said quadruple your prices.
Guys, I want to pipe in for a second because I love what you just shared. And the thing about that is that's an intuitive experience that you develop. Either some people have it naturally. I always felt that I had a little bit of a gift of connecting with people immediately, but I also have developed it, like worked really hard to develop that. And the other part about that is I wanted to, just as you were talking, I came up with 3 measurables because I know that we're sort of talking pretty broad scale, but I want to give you 3 measurables. And, when John talks about growing your business, if we're talking to a salon owner, right, we talk about growing your business and growing sales, and that's just our language. There's a million different ways you can say that, right? When we talk about growing business, we're typically talking about clientele development. We want to expand the demand of clients in your area.
Yeah.
Now, if you're a singular person behind the chair, the way you measure that is retention. Now, retention's a tricky thing for a long time. People, and it's the way we like to measure it. People looked at, how many repeat guests are in my chair this month, and we say that's a good pointer. But the whole story is retention. How many am I keeping over time?
Yeah.
Because just because I saw people last, or 8 people that I've seen before in my chair today, doesn't mean I'm retaining 80% of my guests. It just means I had 8 people that I retained. So anyway, we measure retention over time, and there's 2 different numbers that we look at. Number 1, what's your new retention? And number 2, what's your repeat retention? So your base retention, right?
Repeat retention. Love it.
So where we shoot for is 50-80. We say if I'm talking to a brand new person, I go, if you can learn to get every new person that sits in your chair to get 1 out of 2 of them to come back, you're at 50% retention, and we love that. We think you're smoking it at that point, right? 50% of new people that sit down in your chair come back. That's awesome. Number 2, 80% guest retention, and it goes back to your magical number of 80% full, right? So if I can keep 80% base and 50% new, that's going to point me in the right direction, right? Second is referrals. I have to make sure there's a percentage of my clientele that's coming in that's been sent by their friends. And then the third is reservations, that there's a portion of my book, a good fat portion. I like anywhere from 50 to 65%. If you're getting good at this, 80% is beautiful if you're a seasoned vet, of my reservations for next month, next year, already in play. If you get good at those 3 things, then you'll never have to worry about clientele development again. I don't care if you're a lawyer, doctor, dentist, it doesn't matter, hairstylist.
Yeah.
And
Great
with
point.
that, Chris, then you get to start the journey of what my price increases look like, because you have that support system underneath you that no matter how much you raise your prices, you're not going to lose that many clients. And what little clients you do lose, you're feeding with that 50% new client retention.
That's right. Yep, that's right. And again, these are all formulas. And I want you guys to hear this. And again, hopefully from fellows like us that teach this stuff on a regular basis all the way around, all of us here, I hope you get this. This is a guideline to get you to. This isn't like tomorrow morning it should be like this. If you're not at those type of numbers, you don't even know how to track those type of numbers, reach out, get some support, talk to your salon manager, talk to the salon owner, get some coaching, get some advice, figure out like, hey, what are these numbers good? Are these numbers terrible? And the best thing you can do is like, look, if you, I'll take an analogy outside this. If you're overweight and you're trying to lose 20 pounds, don't worry about losing 20 pounds tomorrow. Lose a pound over the next week, right? And like work towards that as a goal, and don't beat yourself up when you don't get there right away, because if you've never done it before, you don't know how long it's going to take to achieve it. So this isn't a measurement of like in 2 weeks it should be at this number, and at 1 week this should be at this number. Just use the numbers as a goal post to be striving to achieve, to get to.
That's the one last
really
point.
Good news. For those people that work in a commission salon, I guarantee you there's somebody in the room who's already done it, is already good. You don't have to go far. There's somebody in the room of where you're working right now who knows what it takes to get there because they've done it themselves. Go talk to them. They're 3 chairs down from you.
Yeah, absolutely. Chris, you want to make one last point, man? Then we're going to rock and roll.
Yeah, no, I was just going to stand on your shoulders and say it's a journey, man. It's, I as young as I was when I was young, I felt like I needed to get there today. And it ends up that if you take this thing like a journey, you can have a lot of happy, prosperous, enjoyable stages in your career.
Yeah, that's right, man. And not to be too cliche, but when you do fall in love with the journey of becoming an incredible stylist and becoming an incredible manager, leader, or salon owner, when you fall in love with the process, it should never feel like work. It should always feel like you're on a journey. And I think that's the number one thing. I am the most impatient person on planet Earth. You don't even want me, but you don't want me behind you in the line at the grocery store. Cause I'm like, is that line faster? Is that like, I always want to be somewhere else further, faster, in shorter amount of time. And I know there's a lot of people out there that feel the exact same way. And the thing that I've learned about that is be patient with yourself. Nobody else is on your journey. Nobody else knows what you've been through. And whether you want to say God, the universe, the great spirit, however you choose to look at it, there is a plan for you to get not where you would like to be, but where you're supposed to be. If you follow the process, you stay dedicated to what you're doing, and you keep an incredible work ethic on that journey, you will get to where you need to go. Just quick shout out to Doug. His internet dropped out, so that's why I don't get to sign off with Doug. He dropped out, but I think, fellas, we held the show down even without Doug on here. Thank you so much for chatting about what I think is the number one untalked about thing going on right there is the right advice at the wrong time will not help you, but the right advice at the right time will make you extremely successful. Fellas, thanks for being on today. Guys, check out Shop Talk Podcast with Chris and John. Thanks for being on, fellas. Really appreciate you guys today.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to the Evo Revo podcast. Today's video is brought to you by Salon Scale, allowing you to charge by what you know, not by what you feel. Please subscribe, leave us a review, and you can always get more information, including show notes and the video episodes at evorevopodcast.com.